The controversy over Indiana's Religious Freedom Restoration Act is continuing at the State House this year. Legislators will consider whether to add civil rights protections for sexual orientation and gender identity to the state's constitution. It's an issue Governor Mike Pence did not address until his State of the State address this week. And as Barbara Brosier reports, his stance has some Hoosiers gearing up for another battle over a familiar issue.
This is like my fourth sewing machine. I finally got one that I haven't broken.
Jean Smith spends a lot of her spare time sewing. Today she's repairing a beloved cycling jacket that she's worn for decades.
I've had this jacket for probably 30 or 35 years.
But she hasn't always felt as comfortable in her own skin as she does when she's wearing that coat.
I knew I was transgender at 5 years old, and I came out of the closet at 55 years old.
It took Smith so long to come out because she was afraid. She overcame that obstacle and is now living happily in Bloomington. But she's worried about how the ongoing conversation at the State House could impact other members of the transgender community.
You know, they're trying to keep us second-class citizens. You know, they want to believe that their religious rights trump our rights as human beings.
Smith and Hoosiers across the state anxiously waited to hear Governor Mike Pence weigh in on the issue after months of silence. During his State of the State address this week, Pence said he will support civil rights legislation, but only if it doesn't infringe on religious liberty.
I will not support any bill that diminishes the religious freedom of Hoosiers or interferes with the constitutional rights of our citizens to live out their beliefs in worship, service, or work.
Several bills are being introduced during this year's short session that Republicans think would strike that balance. 2 Senate proposals would prohibit discrimination based on sexual orientation, with exceptions for religious institutions. But the latest proposal doesn't include protections for gender identity.
We removed the transgender issue because that whole issue is still unsettled law. Related to that was this whole restroom, shower room issue, which was really causing a lot of confusion, I think, in the hallway, back in the districts with constituents and with our own members, saying we don't understand what kind of rules that's going to set us up for.
One of those bathroom proposals would make it illegal for people to knowingly use a single-sex restroom not designated for their biological sex. A second proposal would require bathrooms in schools to be designated for use by only one sex. Under his most recent civil rights proposal, Republican Senator Travis Holdman would move discussion of transgender issues, including the bathroom bills, to a summer study committee.
We make that a topic of an interim study committee so that issue and those folks would have center stage. There's no other topic to be discussed when we talk about that transgender issue here in the legislature next fall. And so it gives those folks basically the only voice to be heard on that particular issue.
We don't study people in summer committees, and we don't send transgender people to be studied, nor do we really need to study this bathroom issue.
Freedom Indiana is working with Democrats to push for what they say is the only bill that would provide equal non-discrimination protections for all Hoosiers. It's a solution they call 4 words and a comma.
Includes sexual orientation, comma, gender identity in the state civil rights law. That has not happened to be the course that Senate leadership has chosen to follow.
But with a Republican-dominated state house, odds are that legislation won't get a hearing. And that has people like Jean Smith wondering if Hoosier hospitality is just a myth.
I've lived here this since 1972. I've lived in Indiana for all of my life. And if this bathroom bill is the first time I've ever in my life thought, I got to get out of this state. If this would become the law of the state of Indiana, I would close my shop and I would move.
For Indiana News Desk, I'm Barbara Brosier.
There are two other proposals that relate to LGBT rights. One has been dubbed the Super RFRA and would repeal the Religious Freedom Restoration Act and the fix that prohibits discrimination against the LGBT community. It would define several rights outlined in the state constitution, including freedom of religion as fundamental rights that the government cannot infringe upon unless it has a compelling government interest in doing so. And another proposal would ask voters to weigh in on the debate over whether legislators should pass civil rights protections for the LGBT community.